Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Today, our Conservative caucus is shining a giant spotlight on an egregious error that needs to be rectified. Since the news of a convicted murderer receiving assistance from Veteran Affairs Canada, the reaction from veterans and everyday Canadians has been swift and overwhelmingly negative. Some are in shock that such a thing could happen. One would think that a person who approved this paperwork would have immediately took this up the chain of command and said something must be done. I would hope that they said the policy should be changed and the decision must not stand. Well, no one faults the original crafter of the policy, as who could have ever imagined that Veteran Affairs funding could ever flow to a convicted murderer. There is never a wrong time to do the right thing, and the House is now seized with this issue. We are here now, and let's deal with this matter once and for all. Now, when the news went public about what had happened, I thought there had to be a terrible mistake. I agree with the Minister of Veteran Affairs when he said that people are frustrated with how this happened. I know he understands that this is inappropriate. But what I don't know is if he wants to change the policy. But like most Canadians, I shake my head and wonder how could a convicted murderer be able to receive funding from Veteran Affairs Canada so he could go through private treatment while in jail after he brutally killed an off-duty police officer. But somehow it happened. Veteran Affairs Canada is actually paying for his private treatment. And somehow the promised review of why this was carried out is taking weeks to finish. And somehow the Prime Minister saw fit to stand up in this House and refuse to answer questions. Well, I have news for the Prime Minister. Not only will our Conservative caucus continue to stand up and ask the tough questions, we will force him to vote on it. We want the Prime Minister and the entire Liberal caucus to support our motion to revoke Veteran Affairs funding that is going to pay the private treatment of a convicted murderer. Someone who never served a day in the Canadian Armed Forces. He never wore the uniform. He never served our country. And most certainly is not entitled to any private treatment paid through Veteran Affairs. With this motion, we want the Prime Minister to send a strong message to the entire veterans community that what happened is wrong and it must be fixed immediately. It'll also be an opportunity for every member to be on the record on where they stand and if they want to fix this egregious application of the Veteran Affairs policies. And we have to seriously think that if we do not revoke this funding, what sort of message will it send to every veteran out there who is wondering how this could have happened? To quote retired Sergeant Colin Saunders, who organized a protest this year on Parliament Hill over veterans' benefits, he said, and I quote, "In this circumstance, I find it really hard to chew on that we're spending taxpayers' money like that to help someone when we also have veterans that are having a really hard time getting treatment through VAC. Certainly, there's a lot of veterans whose family members need help or need services, and they're not getting it," end quote. And he's right. Sadly, there are those who are currently appealing decisions on why they are not receiving benefits, but yet Veteran Affairs has the funding to pay for PTSD treatment for a convicted murderer. To stress the failure of how this happened, if the convicted murderer had in fact served in the Canadian Armed Forces, he would have been kicked out with a dishonourable discharge, and he probably would not have ever received benefits. But in this case, because the convicted murderer wasn't actually a veteran, he gets to continue to receive assistance. To quote another veteran, Medrick Cousineau, who is the founder of Pause for Thought, which helps place service dogs to veterans who need them, said, and I quote, "How can you have a department who will bend over willy-nilly and yawn to support that? Who will drag its feet toward supporting service dogs for veterans?" He's absolutely right. This is the government that had almost 3 years to ensure that veterans suffering from post-traumatic stress disorder can be paired with service dogs. And we just learned that there will be further delays as a result of their inaction. Our veterans deserve programs and benefits designed to meet their ever-evolving needs. And yet, under this government, we have seen nothing but more backlogs and delays. The Liberals have repeatedly demonstrated they don't intend on honouring all the promises they made to veterans during the 2015 election campaign. While we are not here debating the promises the Liberals have failed to implement, we are here to rectify a very serious error in the application of veterans' benefits. This decision is wrong on so many levels, and the longer we take to fix it, the more veterans and Canadians will continue to lose faith in the system. They are losing faith in the Prime Minister, who had the gall to tell veterans, quote, "They are asking for more than we can give," end quote. Not only did he give that flippant remark, he refused to apologize for it. The reason why that comment stung and made people's blood boil is that we see waste and out-of-control spending on a weekly basis. Today's debate is just another example of misplaced spending that should never have happened. While the Liberal government just wrote a $4.5 billion check to a Texas oil company, they have a very difficult time keeping the promises they made to our veterans. And the veteran community is paying attention. They will not soon forget the Prime Minister's comment or overlook payments to provide private treatment to a convicted murderer. They are deeply upset that after the Prime Minister promised not to take veterans to court, he did exactly that. They're angry that he didn't keep his promise to establish lifelong pensions as an option for injured veterans. Well, I know the Prime Minister does not like facing these tough questions. That's what Parliament is for. He can continue to throw insults and downplay the whole fiasco, but we will not stay silent. We are here to hold the government's feet to the fire and make them accountable for their actions. Shrugging this off, and pretending that it doesn't matter will not make this problem go away. We want the funding to cease immediately, and we want the policy changed so this situation never happens again. We would be shirking our responsibilities as parliamentarians if we did not fix this in the most expeditious manner. I implore my Liberal colleagues to vote in favour of this motion. Stand with us. Send a strong message that funding meant for veterans should never go to convicted murderers. Let us be united in condemning what has transpired and pledge to never let it happen ever again. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Hear, hear.
The honourable member for Brandon Souris will have 5 minutes of questions coming to him when we resume debates. Statements by members.